Hello and welcome to this West London Sport QPR podcast. I'm Dan Bennett and I'm joined by McCullough, Ben Kosky and ex-QPR striker Kevin Gallen. Now, before we start, I've got to make my apologies because we did our predictions video last week for Blackburn, and I may have accidentally forgot to publish the video, and Ian correctly predicted a 1-0 Blackburn win. But to be fair, having gone all the way up there and to watch that game, I'm not sure that will provide you with much comfort anyway. But I mean, it was a poor afternoon for QPR, wasn't it, Kev? Mark Warburton decided that he'd go with the kind of one striker again with Chris Willock up top, and he kind of admitted after the game that
Which
they were
I predict.
You did as well, yeah. Well, we would have known if I'd have published it, but
No, I didn't. Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough.
we just have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
So he went with the one striker, and they really struggled to create chance. I mean, they only had 2 shots on target in the whole game. Mark Warburton admitted after the game they were well below their best. I mean, he said after as well that the players looked a little bit weary. I mean, do you agree with that? Is that kind of the what you thought of the game, that they looked a little bit tired almost?
I wouldn't. Well, you can say that, but we'd say that when you lose a game or you don't play well and you don't have a good performance, you can always come out with, well, we looked weary. But Blackburn played on the Wednesday and they've sort of played similar amount of games as us this season. And as Ian has said over the last few months about Warburton likes a tight-knit squad, and it's not a massive squad. So I don't know. I wouldn't make that excuse. I just feel Blackburn were quicker to the ball. It was just a better team on the day. There's no sort of getting around. And we can talk about tactics and the 11 that played, and Shadia played here, Shadia played there. But at the end of the day, they were quicker to the ball. They passed the ball better, and they were the better team on the day, and they deserved to win. And I've got no complaints as a QPR fan that they deserved it. But it's always about the next game, and you can't get. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You don't get too high when you win. You shouldn't get too low when you lose. So it's on to the next game on Saturday, and you need to get 3 points. It's always on to the next game, always. That's over. Let's focus on the next one. But
what did you?
They were better.
Yeah, what did you make of the team selection in the game? I mean, I mentioned it a minute ago. Obviously, went with the one up front and Willock up top. I mean, from watching it just seemed like they really struggled to keep just make the ball stick. It was just coming right back at them every time. And I think that some of the defensive work, to be fair, for pretty much the whole game until the goal went in, was really good. I thought Jimmy Dunn especially made some really big challenges, but they just struggled to make the ball stick in Blackburn's half, and couldn't. Mark Warburton even admitted after the game just couldn't really seem to string passes together. And I mean, what did you make of the decision to go with Willock up top again and the whole one striker thing? I mean, you like you said, you kind of called it, but I just didn't think it really worked.
I thought it would happen. I don't agree with it. I think Willock has been arguably our best. Well, probably I think we'd all agree probably our best player this season. And he's played his best football when he's played off a striker and near a striker, not as the main striker. So not only are you taking that best player situation out of your team and playing him up front on his own, yeah, I just don't agree with it. A couple of weeks ago, he played left wing back. Then he's playing centre forward up on his own. You want to get into a rhythm of when you play in your best football and you want to stick to that position, and he's getting sort of dragged everywhere on the pitch, and we're all expecting, because he's had such a good season, to be that sort of talisman when he plays in a different position. I think you've got to play him in his position where you get the best out of him, and that's playing off a striker. And I would expect that to happen on Saturday. I think that little experiment, maybe hopefully for me, has expired. And we got a striker on the bench, and Andre Gray. We signed him on loan. He hasn't really played that much. He should be fresh. Why ain't he playing? I don't get it. Why ain't he playing and you play Willock off him? We didn't hold the ball up as well. And when you play up front, and I said it a couple of weeks ago, there's always at some stage you've got to link the play up, especially when you're under pressure. You've got to hold the ball up and get your teammates up the pitch, hold it, link it, and move up the pitch. And we didn't do that. And to be fair to Willock, I don't really blame him that much. I don't blame him at all because he's not a specialist centre forward. And I think that little experiment hopefully is over.
Yeah, I was surprised not to see Gray start again. I mean, I've been expecting to see him in the team for the last couple of weeks, to be honest, because obviously Dykes has remained out injured and Austin obviously hasn't been at his best recently. But, when he came on, Gray, I he wasn't amazing or anything, but I thought they instantly looked more dangerous. He made a couple of really good runs in behind that he almost found. There was one that he very nearly got on the end of, but I just thought they added a new dimension to it that they just didn't have before that. I mean, Ian, were you surprised that we didn't get to see Gray and get a bit more of an opportunity after the game? I mean, obviously you asked him, didn't you, after the game as well about the performance, and he sort of admitted that maybe he should have freshened things up. Do you think that was the time to do it as well?
I'm being brutally honest, I didn't think there's much difference up top between Gray and Willock. He wanted pace up front. That's his reason for it. Rangers they're struggling a bit against teams that are really pressing them. It's become quite noticeable. I mean, Blackburn were very good, to be fair. They were good, but there was a couple of things that look very similar to the Millwall game. Right, for example, the start of the game. And I'm no tactical genius, so don't take this as me sort of telling him what he got wrong. But very first move of the game, almost, it was a big switch from right to left, where the winger got in behind a Doma. The German lad on loan from Brighton had a really good game. And it's almost identical to what Millwall were doing against Rangers, just spreading that play and getting in behind a Doma. Now, I don't think Adoma should have started on Saturday. That's nothing against him. He did really well against Blackpool, but that was a hard game, getting up and down the field, up and down with 10 men. You got Sam McCullough on the bench. Use him. If he's there, use him. Play him for an hour. Bring an Albert off the bench as an impact sub would have been a much better move than starting with that. But they just couldn't get to grips with it. Blackburn looked up for it. They had the two small guys up front, and Gallagher, the big leading man, led the line well. Almost precisely what you want QPR to do when Dykes is fit. So you've got Willock and Chair running along either side of him, and they just were better on the day, and you can't really complain. I wouldn't say Rangers deserved to win, but I thought they'd weathered the storm. I thought they defended reasonably well. Tony Mowbray said after the game that he sort of thought they might have run out of ideas when they did, and the keepers had a stinker and let a free kick go over his hand, and you lose the game 1-0, and you walk away and go, well, you can't say they deserve to win the game, but if they got a 0-0 point out of it, you say it's quite a good point. But you move on to the next game. But I mean, that's for Willock. Really the best chance of Rangers fashion was created by him when he crossed it for Chair, and Chair's got to do better there. Really, he's got to get that on target. And it was a lovely ball from Jeff Hendrick into Adoma. I thought Adoma could have done better, but seeing it back again, the keeper's done well. To be fair, he's closed it down quickly and made the save with his feet. But that side, they didn't really create Rangers. And maybe that Wednesday backing up to a big journey up north on a Saturday just kind of caught up with them. And when he said he made a mistake I don't think he's apologising for the playing Willock up front. I think it's just more for not sort of freshening it up. Maybe George Thomas played well against Blackpool. Maybe he should have started. Bit of pace. Maybe bring Chair on. I don't know, but he should have. Given some fresher legs the chance to kind of start that game, and maybe it would have been different. But you can't complain about the defeat. But again, Blackburn aren't a bad side. They've had a little bit bad run, but they're a good team. They're well managed. They've got some good players, some sharp players. They were very unlucky not to beat Sheffield United. In their previous game, lost to a late goal, missed a penalty. So it's one of those, isn't it? It's a ground that Rangers never win at, and you kind of walk away and think, well. And that's my prediction. Stop clocks right twice a day. So
sadly, we'll never know. It's in the lost files. So you just have to take my word and your word for it. But I mean, you mentioned it there. Obviously, the goal ultimately, I think we'll all agree, was a keeper error, wasn't it? But I don't think you can hold Marshall completely responsible for the defeat. I think, like you said, the bigger issue was the overall performance and the lack of chances created, and just overall poor performance, really, even though if the goal was a keeper error. I mean, for me, like I mentioned a minute ago, it just looked obvious that QPR was lacking so much in Blackburn's half and, up front. They just looked like they were crying out for Lyndon Dykes, and I was hoping that he might get fit and be available, but obviously still out with this knock that he's got. I know he's not been incredible this season. He's not got back to the form he had second half of last season, but he does offer something that I don't think any of the other QPR strikers can offer, and he by far, I think, is their best option up top. He's, like Kev said a few times, he's pretty mobile for a big guy, and when he's on it, he is strong and he does get into centre backs. Ian, do you think like when Dykes is fit, it's just a no-brainer to get him straight back into the team? Do you think he goes straight back in?
Sorry, mate. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I think he'll start. If he's fit, you've got to play him. He just, as I say, the role that Gallagher played for Blackburn on Saturday, he led the line well. Did bring players into the game. I mean, we've talked about Dykes has got to be better holding the ball up, but when he has played this season, generally he has done okay. I mean, he's been out of form the last few games, but it's just his availability this season has been really hit and miss. He's not really had a chance to kind of get a run of games under his belt. He seems to be fit for Scotland, but when it comes to playing with QPR, it seems that his fitness, is a bit kind of patchy. So, but yeah, they need to get him. I mean, he needs to play against Cardiff on Saturday if he's fit, almost certainly. Yeah,
I mean, this is like his probably third or fourth spell out of injury, isn't it? Like a few weeks at a time, and it's really like made it a stop-start season for him. I mean, Ben, obviously Mark Warburton has been very measured throughout this whole kind of slump in form. When it first kind of came about, he's called for a lot of calmness and just reminded everyone essentially where they are in the league and how well they've done this year. And I think we'd all agree that, when you look at some of the teams around them and some of the budgets, QPR are, competing against teams who have much more resources, I think. But I mean, how concerned are you by what we've seen recently? Are you starting to doubt their playoff credentials, or are you still confident that this is just a slumping form that they can get back from?
Well, let's wind the clock back a year, Dan. Let's remember where QPR were then and what people were saying about what was possible, because there was a lot of optimism then about, maybe they can make it into the playoffs. And the reason for that was the momentum. It was because they'd been on a great run of results. It pushed their way up. But if you look at the basic facts, and I forget the exact league table from a year ago, but I think the team was around about halfway, probably about 12th, maybe 11th, something like that. And people were optimistic about we could get into the playoffs. Compare that with now, 5th in the table. And there's an awful lot of doom and gloom, isn't there? And when you look at it in those terms, it's completely illogical, but it's all about the momentum. It's all about the fact that they're not this season coming up with a run to try and sneak into the playoffs. They've been in those positions for most of the season, and suddenly there's a little bit of doubt because, they're under pressure for that top 6 place. But look at it in those terms, and I think you can see it's ridiculous to be so negative about it. 12 games to go, still every chance of taking a top 6 place, every chance. I mean, they have, I think it's actually not a bad thing. They have so many of the other contenders still to play, because you're in a situation there, aren't you, where you get the wins and suddenly, you increase your cushion over potentially teams like Nottingham Forest, Luton. Obviously you've got to play Sheffield United twice still. And in some ways that's, I think, better than if the fixtures list stacked up differently. So I think, it's one result, and we won't, let's not dress it up. They didn't play well. They were comfortably beaten by, certainly on the day, a better team. But, let's just take a step back, look at those facts, as I say, compared to last year, when the general sort of the general theme, if you like, was very different. And what I'm saying is, this year the team have done a lot better. They're in a much better position. So let's be a little more optimistic about it. But just picking up on, I mean, Ian's already mentioned this, and I've got to say I found it odd that they didn't make more changes to the lineup from Wednesday for two reasons. One, of course, because they played over half that game with 10 men, so there would have been a lot of tired legs there. And secondly, QPR by no means alone in this, but they're very quick to complain about the schedule. You know, we can't possibly come back from Nottingham Forest midweek and then play on the Saturday. We've got to move that to the Sunday. So given that you've got a schedule where you're playing Wednesday, then Saturday lunchtime at Blackburn, I think it's very strange to not take advantage of that to use your squad. And as Ian said, George Thomas maybe should have been involved. Luke Amos has come on and scored the winner. Don Ball came on and did well. I'm not saying necessarily all of those, but what I'm saying is there's options there. Definitely could have changed it around a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that he didn't do that. I mean, I think, you know, when you get into a position like QPR are in now, it's so easy for expectations to change. And, you know, the first sort of bad run, and it does become all doom and gloom because of, you know, fans are expecting QPR to get in those playoff places now. And when that starts to look a little bit in doubt, there's obviously a bit of panic. But I think, like you say, Ben, we do have to kind of remember where they were last year, you know, first half of last year, especially, and how much progress they've made. And, you know, such a tough division, the Championship. There's teams in the playoffs, and, you know, look at Blackburn's recent run, as we touched on, and teams just outside that are hitting bad form now as well. So you're not going to be able to be consistent throughout the whole season if you're a playoff team, because if you were, you'd be in the top two. You know, that's what Fulham have been able to do, and even they've had a sort of couple of bad runs here and there. But Kev, do you agree with what Ben said, you know, about that kind of expectation? And do you think maybe it is time to start freshening things up a little bit now? Obviously, I know they're not going into this game like they having a midweek one, and where they were playing with 10 men, so the circumstances are a bit different. But do you think it is time to do that?
Well, regarding the expectation, I'm fans are fans, and we all are expecting because QPR have done so well up until the last, say, 4 or 5 weeks, and we've been on the verge of. Did we get to second at one stage? I think, did we win?
No,
we were on the verge.
Third.
We were very close, and we were third and sitting comfortably. And I think why there's a little bit of doom. I don't think it's not. I think it's a little bit of doom, and I'm not going to put the gloom as well onto it. So a little bit of doom is because I think since the Middlesbrough game, we haven't really played well. Am I right? So we played Middlesbrough, and they were very good on the night. And I think, you know, Joe Lumley gave us a goal, and they sort of dominated that second half. And then I think it was the cup game, Peterborough. I wasn't there, but didn't play well. And the Barnsley didn't play well. And the Millwall.
I think second half of Hull was decent, but the first half wasn't great. So you can't really say that for the whole game. I'm just
saying that I think what the fans are a little bit worried about regarding getting in the playoffs. And I agree with what Ben said about this time last year, but this time last year is that we were on the ascendancy. We were winning every game. We got players in January, and it was all like, you know, and we're looking forward. Now we're sort of, because the performance level has dropped, and that's the thing. This is what worries me at the moment, is the performance level. Is the results. You can play really well and lose, and you're like, well, that was a bit unlucky. But I've been to a few games, and the Millwall game away was poor. We deserved nothing. I watched the game against Blackburn. We deserved nothing. And it's just the performance level is putting doubts, and a little bit in my mind, and doubts in fans' minds. We're now looking over our shoulder, and we're looking at the running and going, we got some tough teams. And Ben says, yeah, it's, you know, it's maybe better to play against the teams around you. I just think every game in a championship is tough. Anyone can turn over anyone, any given Saturday, if you're not on your game 100%. And I don't think QPR have been on their game 100% like they were before in the last 5-6 games. And we need to get back. I mean, I looked at the Millwall game and I looked at the Blackburn game, and they were first to the ball. They were just a little bit more hungry and a little bit more quicker. And regarding freshening the team up, yeah, I do believe get Willett back in his best position. Play the striker. You got 3 strikers. Play one of them up front. I know Dykes is injured. I didn't know what was wrong with Charlie, but play Andre Gray. We signed him on loan from a Premiership team. Play him. And if it don't work out, then next week, hopefully Lyndon Dykes on Saturday's fit. And then you can replace whatever, but just play your best players in their best positions. And Ian said there, and I've just clicked in my mind, I mean, you said that they hit the diagonals, and Millwall did do that against Albert Adoma. Albert Adoma is not a natural defender. He's a right winger by trade, really, isn't he? But he's playing in this position, right wing back. So the other teams are probably thinking, well, hold on, there's a little bit of a weak link there defensively. And he's done ever so well but let's be fair, he's a right side striker, a right winger, and he's playing right wing back. So I just think play your best players in their best positions, maybe freshen it up. George Thomas has got good legs. Amos can get about the pitch quick, especially when you're playing against Blackburn on a massive pitch like that. Play your runners. But look, we've got a game against Cardiff on Saturday. I think we're well good enough to win that game.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Dan, can I just ask you, Kev, that season that you went up, the Ian Holloway team that went up from League One, there was a stage in the season where sort of around this time of year, the results sort of weren't that great. There's a lot of draws in there from memory, and it lost to Bristol City, and it felt a similar kind of mentality with the fan bases now. It's sort of like it's all going to go wrong. It's all, as a squad of players, are you aware of that? Do you kind of the noise outside, or how do you kind of
you can
get back on track? What would like the senior players now be saying to the rest of the squad about know?
And it's a little bit different now because it's all this social media and Twitter, and I do believe, like, when you have players on Twitter, when you lose games and you play badly, you're gonna get stick. You're best off, I think, being off it, really. But then they're on it, and when they win, you get the praise. But Twitter wasn't around then. Am I right?
No.
No, it wasn't around. It was 2004.
Definitely not.
No, but you do feel it on the crowd in the match days. A little bit of apprehension. And we were sort of, I remember the Bristol City game, you're sort of looking over your shoulder a little bit. Hey, we need to start winning some games. And then you sort of just have to have belief and trust in what you're doing, and trust in the players and what you're doing, and trust what the manager's doing. And we got over the line, right? I'd never you always have doubts because that's just human nature. But I always thought we would, on the day, we could pull out the result when we needed it. And we did in the end.
Do you think like someone like Mark Warburton, who's very measured and very, seems very calm, is that obviously different to what Ian Holloway is, but I mean, is that kind of what's needed at this sort of time of the year when results are going a bit south? Do you just sort of, is it the kick up, for want of a better word, kick up the arse players want, or is it a case of just, or is it just?
I remember sort of the last 2-3 weeks. Last 2-3 weeks of the season. We trained, but we were like, there was quite a few days where maybe once a week they sort of went, right, today we're just going down the gym. And we should go down to this gym in Acton. It was Virgin at the time. And we just have a game of tennis. That was a great laugh. Just takes your mind off things, do you know what I mean? So just break things up. Obviously, the pitches weren't as good in those days, and they were drying up and they were bumping. And I think they maybe just thought of this as well. Don't really want to pick up any injuries in the last month of the season with the running. Now, we're a little bit earlier now. It's March, but I'm talking around end of March, start of April, where there's some players who have played nearly every game. Rob Dickey and Barbe, amazing, played nearly every game. Do they really need to train every day when it gets to April? Not really. They just need to be ticking over. And maybe that's what the Ian Holloway and the staff at QPR at the time thought, hey, lads, go down to the gym, go for a little jog, loosener, stretch, go and have a game of tennis, and see you tomorrow. And in the end, it worked.
I was going to say, Kev, I definitely agree with what you said about playing like Willock and playing all players in their best position, really. I think, like you say, Willock moving from sort of wing back to striker, he's been kind of moved all over the pitch. And I think QPR have been at their best this season when Lyndon Dykes has been fit. He's played up front on his own. And then you've got Willock and Chair either side of him creating. I think that's when they're at their best.
Because when Dykes is sort of on it, when he's on his game, he's a bit of a like, he can occupy maybe the two.
He makes those two better, I think, as well, Willock and Chair.
What I'm saying is he can go for the heavy challenges, try and win the ball in the air. He's got good legs. He can maybe stretch the play. So when we do get the ball, he might make a run in behind. The defenders then drop, and then Willock and Chair have got that space between the centre midfield. They're the midfield and their centre halves. They might, that 5 yards they might just drop because they know Lyndon Dykes will run in behind. I don't disrespect to Charlie, but Charlie ain't going to run in behind. So the back four will play up, really up. And that squeezes that gap in between the lines of the midfield and the opposition defence for Willock and Chair to get the ball. There ain't that much space. If you've got a runner, and Andre Gray can run in behind, will stretch the defenders. Last thing the defenders want to do, you ask any defender, they don't want the ball and then running back towards their goal. That's the worst thing they want to do. So if you keep doing it and you're running in behind, that creates, they're dropping off like 5 yards because they don't want to run. And that creates space for Willock and Chair to go and do what they're good at, is get on the ball and make things happen.
Do you think the smaller pitch at Loftus Road helps that? Because Dykes has been pretty good at home this season. It's away from home. He, on the bigger surfaces, he didn't do great at St Andrews. He wasn't great at Millwall. A few other games I've seen this season where he sort of struggled. But at home, the Reading game, he was very good. I think the Coventry game early in the season, he came on, he was good. And do you think, is that a factor, do you think? Because him playing up with two big centre backs and allowing the other two to come in, whereas on a bigger pitch that perhaps his work's cut out more? Maybe because it's a difficult one, but look, home advantage, you'd always have home advantage. And I used to love playing at QPR, just the crowd, and there's always a bit more space. And then you go and play away from home and it's more crash. The other team a lot more. And it's mental, really, because I always thought, why is it's the same 11? You got 11 players. It's the same pitch, but obviously maybe a little bigger, same markings, but home advantage it's just a mental thing, a mentality thing. I just think we should, and we usually do play better at home. And Lyndon Dykes has done better at home. And Andre Gray, I think, has scored 4 goals, and all goals have been away when it's maybe on a bigger pitch and there's more space for him to run into.
Well, looking at it this season, you'd have to say the away record has certainly been comparatively good. And again, I think that's a reason for being a bit more positive going into these last bunch of games. More of them are away from home. I think after Saturday, it's only 4 more at home and 7 away from home. But you look at some of the places they've gone to and won this season. So I don't see any reason why. I almost feel psychologically that has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. I've had a lot of very good away wins, not just this season, last season as well. Again, should be. But I agree with as everyone else has said. Really, you got to sometimes look at different tactics, not just whether you're home or away, but who the opposition are. Because certain teams, certain things are not going to work well against. And again, you'd hope that would be something that. That the people who are paid to study these things and come up with tactics and little points of to try and get a small advantage are going to be aware of as well.
I mean, we could talk about but tactics and this and that. At the end of the day, if QPR, the tactic for me would be get Willock and Chair on the ball as much as possible in the last third. That's the tactic.
Yeah. That's when they're at their best, isn't it? Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to some Cardiff predictions. Obviously, Cardiff at home on Saturday. I'll come to you first, Ben. I don't think I've given you as much opportunity on the podcast. You've been like Andre Gray, you've been a little bit underused. So we'll come to you.
I only get it right away from home. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But Cardiff, they actually play. We're recording this the day they're going to play Derby, so we won't know their last result by the time they play QPR. But they've had a couple of narrow defeats to Huddersfield and Fulham in their last 2 games. They looked kind of destined for relegation at one point, but to be fair, Steve Morrison's definitely given them a lift, and they're quite, they're down. I think they're 20th at the time we're talking, but they're quite comfortably clear of the relegation zone now. What do you think Mark Warburton does here, and what's your prediction for the game?
Well, I think Mark Warburton is stating the obvious. he has to do something different from Blackburn, as I think everyone has agreed. Let's hope. I think Kev said that experiment has hopefully run its course now of not playing striker. That's got to change. I think I would like to see things shuffled around a little bit in midfield as well. I think possibility we might see Sam McCullough getting a start as well, which I think would certainly be no bad thing, assuming he's fit enough. Again, was playing for the under-23 side, I think, today. So hopefully he comes through that. I mean, as you said, Dan, Cardiff, you look at their league position, you'd think that's not very impressive, but as you say, they are probably not going to be in trouble, and they sort of pick things up in January, bringing in two strikers on loan, Jordan Hugill, who we know all about, and Uki Ikpeazu, who is a local boy, just used to play for Brent Schools, and you'll remember that as well. And they've both got a few goals. So I think it goes without saying, certainly not an easy game. And I wouldn't even say it's a must win, actually, because I think at this stage of the season, you've got to look at the games that are remaining in kind of clusters, and say, what do we need from these next 3 or 4 games in terms of points? Call it blind faith. I think they will edge the win, and I'm going to say 2-1 QPR.
Very optimistic. How do you see this one, Kev? What's your prediction?
Well, I always try and go on positive, but that's why last week, which we didn't
get to see.
Ian, but I was sort of.
You went for 5-0, didn't you, Kev?
Yeah. To Blackburn. No. No, the thing was, I was a bit worried about the game against Blackburn, and I always go a little bit positive. So I went 1-1, but I was really going to go like 1-0 like Ian. I think it's another tough game. QPR would need an early goal, because I think the longer the game goes on, I think the crowd will get a bit apprehensive and a bit anxious. Only because of what I said before about, just we're not playing great at the moment. And on that basis, and I always sort of go a bit, I'm gonna go totally honest now. I'm not going positive. I'm not going negative. I'm gonna go 1-1.
I think it will be a tough game. I think QPR have struggled against teams that have sat in, and Cardiff will do that. They play like 5 at the back, don't they? So they'll definitely try and sit in and frustrate QPR, and they're quite happy to not have the ball. So I think it will be difficult, but I am going to be positive, even though I've been positive for the last few weeks. It's not come off, but I'm going to say 1-0 QPR. Ian, what are you saying?
Well, I was at Cardiff for the game last year. Was it last year? Anyway, this season, but last year. And they are like every other Cardiff team I've ever seen. They've got every single player seems to be over 6'2". They're a big, physical, horrible team, frankly. Hugo and the ladders on loan from Borough, big, strong, physical look. But in midfield, they haven't really got any footballers there. They've just got giants. And that the game, it's, Johansson and Dazelle run the show. They just kind of played around them in the middle of the park. And Dazelle put in an exquisite pass for Andre Gray to score. Rangers do quite well against Cardiff, particularly at home. Rangers are a better team. I think they're a very, very bang average team, Cardiff. I think you look back at teams like Hull, players like Force and King Potter, good player. You sort of go, he's got something about. There's nothing I look at the Cardiff team and think, he's got something about him. He's a good player. I think they are, nothing special at all. And Rangers, I think they need to win this game. I think it just seems every game now, let's say win, everyone's on, is going mad on social media and that. But I just think, for people in the ground on that, just to get a win, move on. There's a reason Cardiff are where they are on the table, and you're playing at home. You've got everything to play for. It's a new month. Put February behind you. I think Rangers should win this. I'll go 3-1.
Do you know what? I've changed my mind. Ian made it double positive. I'm going 2-0 QPR now.
You bottled it. You don't want to get the stick. You don't want to get the stick on Twitter. Great. Well, thanks for watching. Let us know what your thoughts on the Blackburn game and what you think for the Cardiff game as well in the comments below. And leave us a like and subscribe to the channel if you've not already. And we'll be back again soon.